Hello and welcome to another episode of the Dauster and Da'Sean and Fanta podcast now. It is Monday morning, June 14th. My name is Rob Dauster. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, John Fanta, and the one and only Da'Sean Butler. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Doing great. Hey, summer's underway. Down the Jersey Shore right now. You know, I'm originally from Ohio, guys, but I feel like the longer the time goes on, I'm just becoming more and more Jersey. Taylor ham on a Sunday, Sopranos red sauce on a Sunday evening, and right into the week here down the shore. Beautiful weather. Look, it is great to be with you two because what we're learning is this sport, if you didn't know already, is a year-round sport. That's a fact. College basketball is a year-round sport. Every day something's happening. So enjoying summer, following some key things happening right now. All is well. Dave, what about you?
I mean, everything's great over here. I'm up here in West Virginia, just enjoying my peace and quiet because the campus is very quiet at the moment, summer. So just hanging out with the kids and watching a ton of basketball and just enjoying it, man. This is summer's always awesome for me. I mean, I get to just watch good basketball and hang out with the family.
I mean, that's the best part about being in college basketball, right? Is that the time that you have off is basically April through November, which is the time where you don't want to be doing anything and you want to be outside enjoying life. And then when you have nothing else to do, you can park your ass in front of the TV and be able to watch college basketball all night when it's 30 degrees out and raining and snowing and when John Fanta is out there being our local neighborhood weatherman.
Or you could park your ass on the couch and watch Chris Paul at 36 years young do what he did on Sunday night in a closeout game. I mean, we're a college basketball pod, but we love hoops. Hats off. Nobody's won the last week more than Chris Paul, who was counted out, doubted, told no, did it in college. Now he's doing it professionally. Like, he's an old school type of player who just keeps on doing it. And that's the other nice thing is when we end our season in college hoops, we go right into the NBA playoffs. And that's when the NBA, that's when everything just heats up in the association. And God, I got to tell you guys, it's fun right now. It's fun to watch CP3 do this. I love watching Donovan Mitchell on a nightly basis. And I think that now the Nets-Bucks series is interesting. Like, it's kind of fun to me to see some new teams in the NBA emerging in this postseason. I think it's going to be a very interesting kind of down the stretch. It would be amazing. Like, I'm rooting for CP3 to get to the finals and hoist that Larry O'Brien trophy because nobody deserves that more than him.
I want to put what he's doing into context. And again, look, this is a college basketball podcast, but the NBA is happening right now. I watch it every single night. I love the playoffs almost as much as I love the NCAA tournament. Chris Paul, Deron Williams, right? They were same draft picked. I think it was third and fourth, right back to back next to each other. And for a while, they were two of the best point guards in the NBA. Deron Williams has not played in the NBA since 2017. It's been 4 years since he played in the league. He hasn't been at the peak of his powers since probably the 2012-2013 season. That year with Brooklyn, he averaged 19 points and 8 assists, and everything from there just kind of it ended up going downhill. He wasn't quite the same. But it's been 8 years since Deron Williams was at the peak of his powers. And Chris Paul, right now, in the year of our Lord 2021, is averaging whatever he's averaging, leading a Phoenix Suns team with a bunch of young talent to the conference finals now, the Western Conference Finals. So it just put that into context. It's incredible. Go ahead, Day.
I was saying off of a sweep.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've watched like a lot of people talk about Chris Paul this year, and it came out. I remember watching one of those like, is he like a top 5 point guard of all time or top 10 point guard of all time? And I am literally shocked that some of the comparisons that Chris Paul has gotten as far as in his total career of him not being like a top of all, like an all-time point guard. Like Chris Paul has not been blessed with like, a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Chris Paul did not get blessed with a Karl Malone. Chris Paul didn't get blessed with any of these great players on his team. He's been on good teams, but he hasn't been on great teams. So to see people like, not give Chris Paul the respect he deserves as far as all time. Like, I mean, he's not Magic Johnson, of course, but like Chris Paul is I would say in my opinion like a top 6 all-time point guard. Like it's hard to like he is nothing he can't do on any part of the floor. And now even now at his old age, like he's still doing things very effectively, still leading and managing teams very effectively. He's resurrected at least like 6 or 7 franchises in his time in the NBA, which no one really does. And I mean, he's the only him and Devin Booker are probably the only guys to beat LeBron first round. I mean, I kind of feel like Chris Paul might be like one of the best players to ever have graced the NBA, in my opinion. But I feel bad that Chris Paul doesn't get his flowers like me and Fanta give him all the time. He deserves it.
I tell you what, that is a great point. You just don't knock LeBron James out in the first round. I don't care if they have a championship hangover, if they got injuries, if they got this, that, and the third. They knock LeBron James out in the first round of the postseason. And anybody who's arguing about LeBron's legacy or what, get the hell out of here. He was lifted a trophy 9 months ago. Shut up. I'm going to tell you right now on Monday, June 14th, 2021, go ahead, take it to the bank. I won't pay your losses, but figuratively, I said my best. I believe that the Phoenix Suns will win the NBA championship. I'm calling it right now. I think they're going to hoist it. I think this is the most complete team left in the playoffs. That gets compounded with Brooklyn being a hospital right now. The Nets, being a mash unit, and now Kevin Durant. I mean, this is a fascinating time for him. How does he handle this? Do we see the alpha come out of KD and he's not going to let the Nets lose? We'll see. But I think the Suns are the best team in the league. And I think that Chris Paul has made them that. Phoenix had all the young pieces. They've got a star in Booker. Aiden's a terrific big man. Mikal Bridges he does all the intangibles, has the frame. I think he's a bigger key than we even know, similar to what he was on the 2018 Villanova national title team. This Suns team, Chris Paul is so comfortable with Phoenix, and Phoenix is so comfortable with Chris Paul. At the end of the day, it's a point guard's game. He is that guy. They've got everything around him. The Phoenix Suns are going to be the NBA champions.
Well, and I think that he needs that too. Day, you're talking about his legacy and how people view him. And it's a perfect example of the priority that we as sports fans put on having to win an NBA championship or having to win a Super Bowl or having to win a national title or a Premier League title or whatever it is. We don't value what you accomplish if you're not winning a championship, right? Like what Chris Paul's done throughout his entire career is unbelievable. It's incredible. But he also has had some of the worst luck when it comes to injuries. Like how many times did Blake Griffin's knee just happen to blow up in the middle of the playoffs, right? It looked like it was going to happen this year when Chris Paul injured his shoulder when it looked like they were, going to have a chance to really make a run at this thing. And I hope for his legacy that he can make a run to even if he doesn't win it, just make a run to the finals. Like go to game 7 of the whatever it is, do something to really prove like what you can be. But it really does kind of put into stark contrast how much we value that. It's the same thing with like a Russell Westbrook. Like how special is that dude as a basketball player, as an athlete? No one can do the things that he can do. Okay, so maybe he's not designed to be able to win in the playoff times. Maybe he's not designed to be able to have that level of usage on a team, just because when you can't shoot, maybe when he's 32, 33, as old as he is now, it changes things. But being able to put up the numbers that he does and do what he does on a basketball court, at some point we can just celebrate that, even if it doesn't lead to a title, right?
No, I agree for sure. I mean, winning the championship obviously is the goal for all of these teams. But we also can't negate some of the things you see people doing. Like what Chris Paul has done has been nothing short of phenomenal throughout his NBA career. Like it's shocking. Like I kind of look at him, like he manages the game like you would say like LeBron would. I mean, Chris Paul's been doing it a little bit longer, but like he manages the game well. He can score the ball from 3. He can score mid-range. He made 5 shots in a row in the same spot the last game. I was just wondering what they were doing. He would just come off the ball screen and just get to the right like the right second hash mark, and it was just floating, knocking down jump shots. He has that. He can get to the basket. Hardworking defender, great manager of the game, great leader. I mean, obviously some guys may not like him as a teammate all the time, but I mean, if you give Jordan that pass, then Chris Paul deserves the same pass. So like, what are we talking about? Like Chris Paul is a better shooter than some of the greatest point guards of all time. He's a better passer than some of the greatest point guards of all time. Like his entirety of his game, I can literally hold Chris Paul up to probably like 98% of NBA players of all time, and he's skill wise and all of it. He's just as good, if not better.
First ballot Hall of Famer, no question. But you know what? As you're bringing this up, bring this back to college basketball, and we talk about Chris Paul validating. You know, and it doesn't. His career doesn't even need any more validation, but the championship would be the cherry on top and the most important of them all. The state of college basketball is this. The sport has just lost 8 national championships and 21 Final Four appearances combined in Coach K and Roy Williams. And now we're in this realm of who steps up, who replaces these guys. Because to us three, and you might disagree, but I highly doubt that you guys would disagree because I know both of you well, and I know you're smarter than some of the hot take artists in the world. Mark Few is an elite coach. But to the casual follower, the immediate thing that pops in their brain is, well, Mark Few's never climbed the mountain. Mark Few has to win the national championship for me to even think about that. And so that's why I think it brings it back to the college game. As we're talking about this, you know, we live in a world where you have to hoist the trophy. It's just how it goes. And when you lose 2 guys, Coach K and Roy Williams don't become what they have been without championships. You know, at the end of the day, what sells everything? Wins. And you've got some coaches that can step up, but your personality is only as good at the end of the day for how much you've won. There's a lot of personality still in the game of college basketball, but the wins don't reflect it to the degree that we have right now in losing Coach K and Roy Williams, which is why as we turn the page back to the sport that we primarily cover, like that's why this is a really, really kind of an uncertain time, not a time of doubt, but a time of, okay, how does the sport move on like it has so many times before?
I think the biggest thing that we're going to run into, and you're exactly right about the credit people get for winning national titles. And now that you mentioned it, I think that Mark Few compared to Chris Paul, like I like it. I see what you're doing there. But for me, what we're missing with those two going to college basketball are the people that will attract attention, regardless of what else is going on in the sporting world, right? Like Coach K, when he says something, everybody is always going to be reacting to it, paying attention to it, talking about it, whatever. Same thing with Roy Williams. In college sports, when you only have the best players for typically 1 year while they're great, then the people that stand the test of time, the people that become the institutions are not the athletes. It's the coaches. It's the face of the program. It's the Nick Sabans. It's the Coach K's. It's the guys at that level. And I think that you can make the argument that Roy Williams and Coach K are the 2 biggest, quote unquote, brands in college basketball, and not having those presences on the sideline is going to be something that I think hurts the level of attention that college basketball will get. Now, when you combine that with everything else that's going on in the sport, from the NIL stuff that is happening, from the transfer portal, from the number of players that are leaving school to go play pro, not necessarily in the NBA, not necessarily to be a first-round pick, but if they can get a 6-figure deal playing overseas, if they can get a spot on a 2-way contract, right? When you combine all of those things together, I do think that we're at a point where college basketball is at something of a crossroads, in the sense that there's no continuity, right? You don't know who the best players are. There's always going to be great stories that pop up. But I think one of the biggest things that we run into in the sport overall is that you don't have these kind of characters that will bring people in year after year after year after year. And, losing Coach K and Roy Williams, I think it's certainly not going to help. So my question is this: who fills that void, right? Is it someone like maybe a Bill Self? Is it someone like a Mark Few? Is it Coach Cal? Is it Bob Huggins, your guy down there in West Virginia Day? I'm not really sure, but somebody has to step up and take that void and take the reins and be able to say what needs to be said without worrying about the repercussions. Like, who right now is bigger than the game in college basketball once Coach K is gone? I don't know.
Honestly, when you put it in those scenarios, I mean, I agree. There's been many a time where Coach K may have something to say, and even if people don't agree, whatever the case may be, when he talks, tons of people do listen. So I won't disagree with you on that. That presence will be missed for sure between him, Roy Williams especially. But as far as basketball goes, I mean, this isn't the first time this has happened, and it won't be the last. And I kind of feel like basketball will be in great hands with the coaches that you just named. I mean, Bruce Pearl, Tubby, like there's tons of guys that are still out here who have won tons and tons of games, have the history to back that up as well. Have won in the past, possibly. You just brought up Mark Few. Mark Few's like what? He's 80, like an 80% winning percent. Like he has an 80% winning percentage. Like that's insane. like him, freaking Rick Barnes is still around. Freaking like his name, Bill Self, Bruce Pearl, Kelvin Sampson just came off of a Final Four. Like there are great coaches still around. So the void has an opportunity to be filled.
Yeah, but my big thing with it, and I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry, but the big thing with it is who are the guys that are not going to be afraid to say what needs to be said? Like Jim Boeheim is one of those guys where he's not afraid to go out there and say what needs to be said. We had this conversation with we've been doing another series called Candid Coaches Conversations, and the most recent one we did was on HBCU programs, the problems that some coaches that started HBCUs have getting out of the HBCU realm and moving up the coaching ranks. And one of the things that was brought up during that conversation was the lack of the BCA, the Black Coaches Association. And the reason why that thing is kind of fallen by the wayside is that Nolan Richardson isn't coaching anymore. Big John Thompson isn't coaching anymore. A lot of those really John Chaney's not coaching anymore. Like a lot of those really powerful voices are no longer in college basketball. So you don't have them pushing the agendas that need to get pushed, so to speak, if that makes sense.
That's true. But
and I think that Coach K is he's kind of been at the forefront of getting NIL stuff pushed through. Like he hasn't been afraid to speak his mind on those things because he knows he's bigger than the game and there's no concern of repercussion right now. I think Coach Cal might be a guy to kind of take the reins on that. But Coach Cal, I think, is also the perfect guy to step up and be like the college basketball villain that is replacing Coach K with him gone, right? So, Fanta, I know you got something to say, so I'm going to stop rambling. Go ahead.
Well, here's my thing on this. So I actually think when I said earlier that it's an uncertain time, it's an uncertain time nationally. And what I mean by that is when the national network covers college basketball, they lead with what they have always seen as what would draw everyone else. You're not going to be able to do that to the same level now with Duke and North. You can't just hinge on Duke and North Carolina. Like last year when someone was calling it the biggest Duke-North Carolina game ever because it was going to decide who was going to go in the tournament. Come on, stop. Basically, the sport has faces. The sport has people that are ready to be in this role. In fact, it's not Duke Carolina. It's not big name brands. But I would argue that we are stepping into a realm where, again, is it sexy? I'm not saying it's sexy, guys, but I do believe that Baylor is here to stay and is going to be a national championship contender as long as Scott Drew is doing his thing. And Scott Drew's story is interesting. He's not going to be a villain because he's really turned everything around and he's a genuinely nice guy. Mark Few was just in front of Congress last week. He's not afraid to say things, but his team plays at 11 o'clock at night and they play in the West Coast Conference. That hurts Mark Few and Gonzaga. Whether we like it or not, that's just the reality of the situation. Jay Wright is known as the good guy in college basketball. I don't believe he's looked at as a villain at all because he coaches a small Catholic school just outside of Philadelphia. I will say this. I have some villain candidates, but in terms of faces of the sport, Jay Wright is 59 years old. He has won 2 of the last 5 national championships, and I expect Villanova to be in a Final Four in New Orleans next April. I really believe that with Gillespie back and Samuels, I think that this team is going to be primed to have a successful year with the freshman class they have coming in. If he gets a third, and I think he's 59, I think he's going to get a third here at some point. If it comes sooner than later, you just don't win 3 national championships in a decade.
No.
And I don't think Baylor's done yet either. So I think the sport's in a place for some faces of success, of consistency to emerge, but that doesn't have the same ring as Coach K and Roy Williams. So we have to get used to saying Baylor, Villanova. It doesn't draw the same eyes, and it's not the same exact alumni bases. But I think for college basketball, we watched Duke. If you were a casual sports viewer and you stopped on a game at Cameron Indoor, you were waiting for the next shot of Mike Krzyzewski, and you said, "I'm interested. I'm pulled in." So where the sport does, the same can be said of Syracuse nowadays. When you see a Syracuse game on your TV, you want to see what's going on. Boeheim's a really polarizing figure. Some of the guys I just listed, Scott Drew, Few, Jay Wright, they don't carry the same. But gosh, one of those 3 is going to be in the Final Four for the next 5 to 10 years. That's just how it is. So we kind of have to change the way that we talk about the sport, understanding that the sport is ever changing. And that you can't get too attached to a player because they could be here today on one team and gone tomorrow on the next. And the sport will survive. I hate when people threaten it, do that. It's just not true. It's just the way that we talk about college basketball has to change. And people don't like change. It gets them all kind of curl up. But I can tell you right now, the blue blood has evolved. I will take Villanova, Baylor, Gonzaga, and I'll pick Michigan because recently they've been terrific. I'll take those 4 right now over Duke, Carolina, Kansas, and Kentucky.
Going out on a limb there, Fanta. I like it. So, Dave, let me segue this real quick and to kind of steer this conversation moving forward, right? The Duke brand, right? How does that survive the change with Coach K? Because the comparison that I keep making in my head is Indiana, right? Indiana under Bob Knight was this absolute powerhouse. They won 3 national titles. They were the best program in the Big Ten, this, that, and third. We all know the story. Since Bob Knight's been gone, they've gone through 5 or 6 coaches. They've never gotten back to that level. They had some time where they were the worst program in the Big Ten. They fired a guy that won 2 regular season titles in the course of 4 years. They're always chasing to get back to what Bob Knight was, when maybe that's a little bit harder to do than people realize. Duke is now replacing maybe the greatest coach to ever do it with a 33-year-old assistant that is young enough that I covered the game when he won the national title of the 2010 Final Four. So
I guess he was good. He was good.
Yeah. I should. My bad. I shouldn't have mentioned that one. Anyway, how does Duke move forward here, and can Duke still be Duke in the Jon Scheyer era?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this coaching change is that, I mean, it doesn't happen every year, but it happens. And if Duke doesn't just get obsessed with the Coach K way of doing things and just lets Jon Scheyer be Jon Scheyer, and hopefully doesn't just, fire and then look for the next Coach A and fire and do the things that you just mentioned Indiana doing, I feel like Duke would be fine. I mean, it's like basketball is changing. You're gonna have these guys are gonna be the faces sooner or later. So in due time, like Nate Oates and all these other guys, these are newer guys who are in front of everybody. They're not new coaches, but they're newer guys that were in front of people, and people are gonna like these guys, and these guys are gonna win games over years, and they're gonna get their opportunity to win national championships. Duke just needs to weather the storm and just trust the process and not be in a rush to get this coach or get this new guy, or let's find this coach that did it before, and all these things. Just find your guy, ride with your guy, because that's what they did with Coach K initially.
Mm-hmm.
Find your guy and then ride with your guy. And you take this guy from the Army, and all of a sudden now you have all this great stuff happening there just because you were loyal to your guy. So hopefully they stick to those things.
Yeah, that's just I like John, right? I like him a lot. I think that he's a very sharp guy. I think that there is a realistic world where he ends up keeping Duke at the same level. At the same time, your first head coaching gig is taking over as one of the greatest coaches to ever do it. Your first head coaching gig as a 34-year-old is to try to replace a guy that bare minimum, right? If let's just call Coach K a top 5 coach of all time. If John Shire does not end up being a top 5 coach of all time, then he is a step down from the guy that he's replacing. Like that is just a nightmare scenario to walk into on your first job. And there's no way he can say he can turn it down, right? And he very well might end up being a great coach that can bring national titles back to Duke. But that's so much pressure to walk into. Like I don't know how you. I don't know. It's hard. That's all I'm saying is it's hard. Like I hope that they give him some leeway, man.
Do you try to fill those shoes though?
No.
Like
it's not possible.
I kind of feel like I would never even attempt to. Like, why try to fill those shoes? Like, for example, you think of Coach K, what he has, how many wins total?
1,000 something, more than anybody else is going to get.
Exactly. And then with that, in that thought process, I remember when Lon Kruger retired, and I was just sitting there like, he didn't even get to like close to the 1,000. Like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, Lon Kruger is a great coach who retired, and it was one of the greatest coaches to ever coach. Like, when John's done, if John does everything the right way, obviously, and does things the way he's supposed to, it doesn't matter if you can't touch Coach K. You're still a great coach. Mm-hmm. Like, if they won a national championship and never won another one with John as the head coach, I mean, John's still not Coach K, but he's still a great coach that had a chance to win a national championship. So, I mean, I kind of feel like guys, any coach, like you shouldn't be out here trying to fill anyone's shoes. Like no two paths are the same.
Yeah,
like,
it's just the level of expectation that gets put on you when you're the head coach at Duke. And he has no control over that. But Duke fans expect you to be competing for national titles, right? There's media members that expect Duke to be competing for national titles. If Duke ends up being a team that every year goes 24-10 and makes it to the Sweet 16, right? They're a really good program. Is that going to be something that the Duke fan base and the Duke donors and the Duke alums and the people that write about the sport and people like me and you and Fanta, is that going to be something where we say, okay, he's doing the job that is expected at Duke? And like, that's no fault of his own, but that's something that could very well happen in this environment. Go ahead, Fanta. I see. I love this video right now because I could see Fanta's reaction. I just know that he's got something to say. So go ahead, John.
I'm just saying, Duke hasn't gone to a Final Four since 2015. Mm-hmm. As we head into next year, that's the longest gap without a Final Four appearance for this program.
And Coach K's there.
Since the late 1970s. Late 1970s. All good things must come to an end. Mike Krzyzewski has done it all. There's nothing more that he could have done. He's in his mid-70s. When you make a change, you're absolutely right, Rob. The Duke expectation level for their head coach is unrealistic to achieve.
Yes.
You have to do it your own way. If I'm John Shire, I called Juwan Howard. I talked to him for an hour. And I talked to him about stepping into Michigan, post John Beilein, I am not comparing Duke and Michigan. I promise you I'm not, but I'm using another case to give a taste of what it's like, in my opinion. John Beilein, guys, made it really, really hard to replace him at Michigan because we're talking about the Wolverines. What Beilein was doing before he departed for the Cleveland Cavaliers, they were winning at an incredible rate. And the Juwan Howard hire was a feel-good hire, but the thought in mind was, is this going to work out? Well, I think Juwan Howard's gone about things his way. He's gone by his own beat. His team plays like an NBA team when I watch them play, and he conducts himself like an NBA coach. And it works. It's worked out quite well in Ann Arbor. John Shire cannot live in the shadow of his coach. He can't do it. You cannot do it. I think it's really hard to achieve. And I think that John Shire has what it takes to be a head coach. But if he is constantly hinging on the Duke way, the Krzyzewski way, you can both respect that way and try to take on the spin that you'd like to make on the program. Because here's the fact. The way that Duke had been doing things is no longer the way that you rise above everyone else in college basketball. So it's going to take some changes. It's going to take Duke potentially recruiting some players that Mike Krzyzewski wasn't willing to recruit and develop. Talent development in this sport and keeping a relationship with a kid has never been more important. You look at the programs that are at the top of college basketball, you look at what Mick Cronin did in building relationships with kids that he did not recruit. He kept them by his side, and look what happened to the Bruins. Look what happened to Baylor, to Gonzaga, to these other programs that have been at the top of the sport. You have to think outside the box. The sport is changing. Duke has to change. You can't just be the same old Duke Blue Devils. Like the Yankees can't just be the same Yankees, and Yankee fans know all too well right now the feeling. You can't just rely on what you were doing for 30 years and say, this is our formula. At some point, you're going to get beat if you stay at this level. And when you're a coach in your mid-70s and you've been doing it all your life, I totally get Mike Krzyzewski, who was always willing to say the right thing. But the fact is, guys, the last couple of years, it felt like the Duke was losing games that it hadn't been losing when Coach K was at peak Coach K. So for me, I don't think the timing is bad. However, I do think that both Duke and Carolina, they left themselves limited. Like, you pick these replacements. I think both guys are capable. My biggest question is, I'm actually toying with this question. Who has a better chance of having championship success at respective school? Hubert Davis at North Carolina or John Shire at Duke? I'd probably vote Hubert Davis at North Carolina if you asked me today. That answer could change, but that would be my vote. But I'd be curious to see who would win that poll.
That is a good question.
That is tough. I think I would probably lean Shire there, but it's very much
Okay.
we're very much trying to figure out what both of those guys are at this point,
You
right? Here's my question, and I brought it up a little bit earlier, and I want your guys' take on this. Coach K was the villain in college basketball, right? The same way that LeBron is the villain in the NBA, and the same way that Tom Brady is the villain in the NFL. You either love him or you hate him. Same way the Yankees are the villain in Major League Baseball, right? So I want to know who you guys think is going to step up and fill that role of the villain in college hoops with Coach K gone, because I do believe that having someone that everybody can root against, right? Having just that universal figure that you either love or you hate, it's important. Like, the NFL is better when the Cowboys are good and we can argue about whether or not they are actually good, right? I mean, you can argue with Cowboy fans. Major League Baseball is better when the Yankees are good and we have people that hate the Yankees or love the Yankees. You could say the same thing about the Red Sox. When both those teams are great and you have an entire nation that hates everybody in the Northeast that's a baseball fan, while they happen to be two of like the 5 best teams, like, that's a good thing for the sport. So I want to know, I gave you a homework assignment. Who are your potential villains? I have 3 written down that I think could step up and fill that void.
Please enlighten me on your 3. I would love to hear it.
You go first. Fanta, you got a list? You want me to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. I'd be happy to go first. I'll step out on the limb.
There we go.
I have 3. So I'm going to start with a very brief, I think this is good for. I think Coach K and Roy Williams retiring is good for the Pac-12. The Pac-12 clearly has a door reopening in the sport. With that being said, there is no question in my mind that Mick Cronin can be a villain in college basketball again. Feel-good story this past year because they were an underdog. UCLA and underdog, those don't mesh. I want UCLA to be good again, like really good, because Mick Cronin, when he's really good, Mick Cronin is a good guy. Like, I like him personally, and I've had him on shows. He's a great interview. But Mick Cronin can stick it to people, and I like that. I like that about Mick Cronin. I want you to stick it to him. So Mick Cronin would be one for me because UCLA is a big brand. They're in LA. I think he could cause some stirring of the pot if they schedule right, and if the next Pac-12 commissioner finds some ABC windows and some popular television windows to get UCLA basketball kind of in the forefront of the sport again. We need that Pac-12 Saturday afternoon showcase to return to broadcast television to get people talking a little bit more about Pac-12 basketball. That's one thing to learn. Mick Cronin would be one for me. I gotta
Well,
say,
let's rotate. Let's rotate through. Let's rotate through and go step
Mick
by
Cronin's one there.
because Mick Cronin was one of mine, which is perfect because he's such an angry little dude, right? But like UCLA fans are going to love him. You mentioned he's a good interview. He's a great interview. He understands like how to be a presence on camera. He's got some charisma to him, even though it doesn't really look like he's a guy that's meant for charisma. And like I don't know how much you guys listen to the Parrish and Norlander podcast. What is it, Ion College Basketball or like Titus and Tate? But both of those pods love Mick Cronin. Like they have running jokes about Mick Cronin, like the greatest coach, whatever at UCLA. So at some point, people are going to get sick of that. The tide's going to turn, especially if they end up being as good as they should be next season. And you mentioned he can stick it to people. Do you remember when he almost got in a fight with JP Mercura? Right? Do you remember when he came out in the press conference after the Xavier Cincinnati brawl? He's perfect for the villain, which leads into my next one, right? The other guy that media loves, right? Who the media loves this guy more than just about anybody else. But he also, one, coaches at a blue blood. Two, has some NCAA issues in the past. A lot of people think that he's a cheater. And three, there are certain question marks about his hair, the same way that nobody believes that Coach K actually has jet black hair at this age. And that is the one and only Bill Self of the Kansas Jayhawks. He is perfectly suited to become a villain in the sport. Media love him. I love him. He's a great guy, right? But if Kansas can get back, if they can get past this whole investigation, right, and he doesn't get fired and the program doesn't get torpedoed, he has a chance to be something where everybody hates him. Media loves him. Everybody hates him. So I think Bill Self is the obvious number 2 on this list. Day, where are you at?
He was my third pick. I agree with you. Like when I was a young kid, watching Kansas, and I used to hate watching Kansas because of Bill. So he would sit there with a smirk on his face when they would be winning games. I used to, Bill Self was a big problem for me growing up. My pick, this is gonna be pretty funny. The perfect bad guy is Rick Pitino. Like the perfect one. I think next year, I think people were pretty upset that he made it to the NCAA tournament with Iona. I knew people from up north that were not pretty, like they weren't happy about Rick Pitino back in America, in the limelight, suited up, hair slicked back, talking, getting in his players' faces, talking crap. Like people do not like Rick Pitino as much as they used to. I think Rick Pitino, if he can schedule some games and he's still at Iona, schedule some games and get his guys ready for next year, I can see Rick Pitino taking some people off that he's still around when Coach K and Roy Williams aren't.
You know what we really needed? We needed Rick Pitino to go get the BC job is what we needed.
I thought he was going to
We needed him to take BC to do the same thing that he did with BC that he did with Providence back in the 80s. That's what we needed. It didn't happen. But Rick was one of the guys that I was thinking about. But it's Iona, man. Like if he can't get out of Iona,
you can't get him out of there. He can't be the bad guy at Iona. They might not take him.
We just disrespected it. NYC's finest over here. Fanta is not happy about us disrespecting Iona.
Oh, come on. You can't. Here's the thing with Rick. So I think that Rick Pitino, it's kind of like the WWE type of thing when they are a villain for so long that WWE fans get so tired of it. So they start rooting for the villain to like do good things.
Kurt Angle.
I actually think people are entertained with Slick Rick. So like they're like, you know what, this guy's in his old age. He's still winning. We can't paint him out to be the demon. And hey, there's a lot of people who on the flip side are like, yeah, Rick Pitino got away with everything, and now he's back in college basketball. He stuck it back to him. I want to root for that. So I just thought of one, though. And I think he's, again, really, really, really good guy. You can both be a really, really, really good guy and a villain, okay? Because you could be respected and liked by a certain crowd of people. There's also a certain crowd of people that could take issue with you. If Eric Musselman keeps leaping on tables after NCAA tournament wins, there's a chance that some people really start to not like that. And not just some people. I'm waiting for Musbus to win a big tournament game, go crazy, which I love. I love it. We love it. But I'm waiting for an opposing coach after the game to be like, act like you've been there before. I don't even understand what that is. Like, what is that behavior? we need that. Like, I would love that because I think Arkansas is just getting started. Like, I'm buying the Muss Bus. I think he's going to win a lot. He's a winner. But I also think that he rubs some other coaches the wrong way.
Oh, yeah. Look at the turnover in his staff. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you go back and look at his staff, it turns over almost every single year. And it's because he can be kind of, I'm trying to think of how to say this politically correct.
Condescending a little bit.
A little bit intense.
Yeah, intense.
But he also, no coach in college basketball, aside from maybe Lavelle Moten, understands how to use social media better than Muss. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't run his own accounts. I don't think he's actually the one out there like posting the tweets that he sends, but he understands how to play that foil and how to kind of troll people online. And if someone's coming, like if you go at Muss on Twitter, there will be a tweet from the Eric Musselman account, the official one, coming right back at you at some point. So I love that. I didn't even think of that, Fanta. I love that call.
Yeah.
All right, I got another one from the SEC.
I know where you're going with this. Yeah, I know exactly. I got it.
It's Will Wade.
Well, yeah.
Will Wade. There's two in the SEC that, well, Coach, we already mentioned Coach Cal, right? So yes, look, you're the head coach of Kentucky. You've won national titles. You change the one and done stuff. You say whatever you want. You're great in press conferences, but you know how to piss people off. Yes, Coach Cal obviously is the obvious pick. Will Wade, I think, with how much he has been linked to cheating, right? I don't want to say how much he cheats, but how much he's been linked to cheating since he's been at LSU. The whole strong ass offer deal. The only problem with him is like it's LSU, right? Like, I don't know if that's a big enough brand for him to really kind of ascend to that level. And there's no way, like, he's not getting hired for a bigger job at any point, right? So I kind of think he's going to be at LSU until he ends up getting fired, making $3 million a year, and that's kind of what it is. But I just don't know if he's at a big enough program to really be that guy. But yes, Coach Cal's the guy from the SEC. If it's going to be someone, it's probably going to end up being him. Day, where you at? Oh, he's on mute.
Aren't we past that?
I was going to play. My bad.
I'm leaving that in. We are 16 months into a Zoom-only pandemic, and Da'Sean Butler is still messing up on the calls. What is going on over here, man?
I wanted to make sure you didn't get my squeaking in while you were talking. I was going to say, as a judge, I was like, I'm going to pick Jerry Stackhouse. The reason I'm picking Jerry Stackhouse as a villain was mainly because a lot of people weren't happy that former players were getting these jobs. And now that these former players are getting these head coaching jobs and they are in the forefront in high top Power 5 schools, like someone like Jerry Stackhouse, who obviously had his small issue last year with one of his players publicly. I mean, and a lot of coaches, and I'm talking about a lot of coaches, people I know they were like, yeah, maybe, Jerry should have not said that and kept his mouth quiet. And they weren't too happy about the way that he carried himself. So I would say, Jerry Stackhouse could probably be seen as a villain this upcoming season if he was able to win enough.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. If he's able to win enough. So my if he's able to win enough villain would be a coach who would be regarded as a villain no matter who he is, because the fan base of this school likes to stick it to everyone else. And now with them being back in the conference that they belong in, the Big East, I would go with UConn and Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley, a personal friend, good guy, family man. But here's the thing. He coaches at UConn and he has a fiery personality. And guess what, guys? UConn's not going anywhere in terms of they're going to be a top 3 Big East program for the foreseeable future because they can recruit. They've got the resources. They have an edge on other Big East schools that's just going to carry them right near the top of the Big East. Last year ended in disappointing fashion. It did. But Hurley has this charisma, and it's kind of waiting to get unleashed in the NCAA tournament. UConn is going to be good. He's going to win enough, I think, to potentially get to that national exposure of, God, this, when you're watching UConn, if they go on a Sweet 16 run, you're going to see Hurley going crazy on the sidelines. And that might rub people like a little bit of a weird way. But the thing is, UConn fans love to take that stick and put it in the fire to make sure that they're getting under you. They do it in women's basketball all the time. Like they literally, the Kim Mulkey stuff with the mask, and she was arguing about not giving the teams COVID tests in the women's Final Four. UConn fans just kept on playing that quote on the women's side for like 2 weeks to show that, like, you know, Gino is better than Kim Mulkey. Like they love to do that. I could see them doing some similar things. They did it with Calhoun all the time. Like Jim Calhoun was hated by some people. I love Jim Calhoun. I love that. Did y'all see Jim Calhoun's quote about Coach K? In the process of honoring Coach K, Calhoun made it known that, oh yeah, he means a lot to me because, I beat him. Like that is
no. What? So that's because this was great. This was like this really sums up the UConn fan base perfectly. What he basically said was, "Yeah, I owe a lot to Coach K because when we beat Duke in 1999 to win the national title, that really put us on the map. And we only grew more when we beat Duke in the 2004 Final Four when everyone thought that they were the favorites, and we came back and then we won our second national title. So our programs are really tied together because they beat us once with Leitner, but then we beat them twice to win national titles. So they really helped us grow. He means a lot to me." It's just like, yes,
only he could get away with that.
Yes, only Calhoun could. But you're right. You're right about Hurley. There's nothing funnier than when Hurley, he's like just livid, but he's trying to suppress all of that anger, and you could just see it. Like you see smoke coming out of his ears, but he's just sitting there stewing. He's got this face like this, and he's making all these weird like contortions with his face. It's just, and he's got like the thick glasses on. It's just, yeah. He would be very good at being a troll. Along those same lines, the one other guy I had on my list was Tom Izzo, for a lot of the same reasons that Bill Self is on that list. He's at a blue blood or a power program, however you want to phrase it. He's a guy that the media loves and adores. He's not afraid to say what he needs to say. And he can also be someone that can strike a bit of controversy, right? Like how many times have we seen him end up being a topic on like First Take or whatever because he yelled at a guy when he came to the bench? Because he's still a fiery coach. He still coaches intense. He's not afraid to scream at you. So I think that he could definitely step into that role and that void if he wants it, and if Michigan State can get back to that level that they're expected to be at. You guys got anyone else?
No, I'm good. I could not top you guys with the names you were throwing out here. Like I haven't, like Danny Hurley's nuts, and I have no one that can beat Danny Hurley. So.
All right, so I want to close the podcast with this. A lot has happened over the course of the last 2 or 3 months in terms of roster changes and roster moves and people declaring for the draft and deciding that they're coming back. But I wanted to go through what were maybe like the 5 or 6 most important and most influential decisions that are left to be made. And I'm going to start with one that just happened this week, where reports came out that Jalen Duren, it's not official yet, but reports have come out that Jalen Duren is strongly considering reclassifying into the class of 2021. For people that don't know who he is, he's kind of surpassed Amani Bates as the favorite to be the number 1 player in the class of 2022. He's a 6'10" athletic specimen that plays the 4, really good passer, has a lot of I guess Bam Adebayo is the guy that a lot of people are comparing him to in terms of his athleticism, his defensive versatility, his rim protection, the fact that he's actually a really good passer, the jump shot not really being there. But if he could end up getting into the class of 2021, getting eligible to play in the class of 2021, you're talking about a guy that has a very real chance to be a top 5, top 3, maybe the number 1 pick in the 2022 NBA draft. And he's old enough where he can make that happen if he reclassifies. So I don't know if he'll go to college. It seems like there are some pretty strong links to Kentucky, but for me, that's the number 1 guy on the list, and it's not close.
Yeah, I would look to Columbus, because I think that Dwayne Washington and EJ Liddell, what they end up doing is huge for Ohio State and the Big Ten. If those 2 are in the fold with the Buckeyes, Chris Holtman's team is a top 10 consensus team in the country, if not 5th or 6th in college basketball entering next season. So I am keeping a close eye on Liddell and Washington. There's unfinished business. Ohio State got embarrassed. got embarrassed by Oral Roberts. I mean, they just, you can't lose that game. They had that game. They lost it. And now there's going to be pressure. And I think that those two, if they can come back, the Buckeyes could be a pick. Like, they might be viewed as a dark horse nationally, but they shouldn't be. If those two are back, they should be viewed as a team that could make the Final Four. And it's time for them to do so in the Big Ten. They were playing real well at the end of last season. If you remember, they almost won the Big Ten title. And but then they fell apart against Oral Roberts. They lose that game. So I'm keeping a sharp eye on what Dwayne Washington and EJ Liddell do, because if they don't come back, Ohio State, they don't carry the same type of equipment. If they do come back, we're talking about them as a team that could win it all in New Orleans next April.
I would just keep it more in the Big Ten. I think if Hunter Dickinson comes back to Michigan, it puts Michigan in a great spot, and that'd be great for Juwan. I mean, to look at the Big Ten this season and look at how good the bigs were, like having a guy like Hunter Dickinson literally helped Michigan claw through the entire season. It didn't matter who they played, whether it was Luka Garza or whether it was Travion Williams or in Purdue, whoever. It didn't matter. He literally took the challenge, and even when they lost a couple of their players toward the end of the year in the tournament, like at the end of the day, he kind of carried that team with his physicality, with his rebounding, with defensively changing shots, and just being a massive guy down in the paint. And I feel like having that guy come back better, with better touch, a better player, I can't foresee Michigan not being good or great, especially with the guys they have coming back.
Yeah, they have some really good freshmen coming in too. And they landed Devontae Jones, the point guard, the transfer from Coastal Carolina. It's Caleb Houston and Moussa Diabate, I think is how you pronounce his name, that are the headliners of that recruiting class. Staying in the Big Ten, I think the other guy that you have to mention in this conversation is Trevion Williams. Right, he's kind of the guy that Purdue built their offense around this year. His passing ability, his ability on the block. Like, there were games that he just willed Purdue to a win, scoring out of the post, and that doesn't happen in college basketball, right? Like, you don't win games by throwing the guy into the ball into the block and letting him go. But the one that specifically sticks out in my mind is I think he had 27 in the second half as Purdue came back from 17 down to beat Michigan State on the road. So he's a very, very big time player. And if he's back and Jaden Ivey ends up taking the leap that a lot of us expect him to take, I think he averaged 18 over his last 6 games. He was really good in the tournament. If he takes a leap, you get Trevion Williams back. You got all these freshmen coming in from Purdue. Matt Painter is as good as anybody in college basketball at taking the pieces that he has and finding a way to turn them into a winning basketball team. And he's going to have some damn good pieces next season if Trevion Williams is back. Go ahead, Dave.
He played amazing toward the end of the season. I mean, like you were just mentioning, him being able to find people. Like, that was one of the first things I noticed, like when you watch him play, like his feel for the game when he catches the ball and he's like basically quarterbacking from the post. Like, there's not many bigs that are doing the things that Trevion was doing toward the end of the year. So
yeah. Fanta, you got another one?
Well, I think that the obvious one is Johnny Juzang at UCLA, because if he comes back with Jaime Jaquez and what the Bruins have coming in as well, we're talking about a team that could get back to the Final Four. I will go, though, to the Big East, and I think that Julian Champagne's decision is big. His brother Justin from Pitt going forward, going to the NBA. So what does Justin's twin Julian do? And for those thinking, well, come on, it's St. John's. I mean, like they're not a team that's, that really rings the net. Here's the thing, though. Posh Alexander is the real deal. He is the real deal. I mean, this kid, if you haven't seen him play yet, or you haven't watched a lot of Posh Alexander play for St. John's, he changed everything about that program last year. Julian Champagne's a guy, he can average 20 for you. I mean, he's just a bucket. He's 6'8". He shoots the three. So he has the makeup of a guy that has a high ceiling. Does he forego another year of college? Look, it comes down to what he decides. I think he's leaning towards coming back to St. John's. And if Champagny and Alexander we know is coming back. If Champagny comes back with him, I think St. John's is a top 5 team in the Big East next season. If Champagny does not come back, St. John's is 8 or 9 in the Big East next season. That's how big of a difference Julian Champagny makes. And I think that Mike Anderson's team could be an NCAA tournament dark horse, a team that could make it next year that people might not think at the start of the season would make it. They were coming on last year. They just stumbled a couple of times against teams they shouldn't have stumbled against. If Champagny's back, St. John steals a bid that a Lenardi or a bracketologist doesn't have right now on their radar.
Yeah, they were also really young, and getting a little bit more experience is going to help. But I want to circle back to just mention Juzang again, because I think that if he is back, and we know Chris Smith is back to 100% from the torn ACL, I think I probably would have UCLA as the favorite to win the national title. I just think that trio of Jaime Jaquez, Johnny Juzang, and Chris Smith is as good of a wing trio as you're going to find. Tiger Campbell has proven his ability to be a winner, to be able to control a game, and to be able to facilitate. And Cody Riley is just, he's one of these guys you could dump the ball to on the block, and he's going to make the right decision. So I would really, really expect UCLA to have a chance to win a national title with Juzang back. Without him, I think it changes a lot because, look, we saw what he did in the tournament, right? Like, you don't really need to elaborate on that. He's a bucket. He's a killer. So, I mean, without him, UCLA is going to be really good. With him, I think we're talking about like potentially getting back to the Final Four, having a chance to really to win it all. The other guy I wanted to mention was your guy, Da'Sean, Miles McBride, because I was kind of expecting him to be someone that would seriously consider returning to school. I had a conversation the other day with someone about, maybe he could be a guy that could sneak into like the top 25 into the back end of the first round just because of his scoring ability, his ability off the bounce, what he really did down the stretch of the season. So I'm curious. You watched him probably as close as anybody. You know him better than either John or I do. What do you think about him as a pro? He did it again, Fanta.
I hit the button too beforehand. It didn't press. This is awesome. I'm embarrassing myself. No, I think he's a pro. When he first got there, like we talked about on this show 100 times, I didn't think he was a natural point guard. He was a really good off guard. Could shoot the ball in the mid-range really well, and pretty good defender, but he couldn't really pass the ball too well, and he didn't really extend the defense with his jump shooting. Came back this season, worked on all those things, and then showed everybody he could do those things, as well as just raising his scoring average even more. I think he's a professional player in the NBA. I really do. It's just a matter of if those teams feel that he can be the point guard they want him to be. It really falls on which team picks him. Because if you put the ball in his hands, I feel like you can get something good. He can get anywhere he wants to as far as his own scoring ability. He's a great scorer in the mid-range. He's obviously showed his three-point shooting is gotten better, and his decision-making has gotten better. He has some lapses during the year with some of his decision-making, but for the most part, in comparison to his freshman year to this past year, it's not even close, night and day. He's shown that he can be a really good point guard. I just wonder how he stacks up against the other point guards in that top 25. I would pick him because I know what kind of guy he is, but I just wonder what those teams see when it comes to McBride. So,
yeah, I think he's going to go in the draft. I do. I would if I were him. His stock has risen. It looks like he's going to be a first-round pick. Where that falls, we'll see. But if you think, we haven't even hit the combine yet, he's only going to help himself there. Mm-hmm. I think Deuce McBride is an NBA draft first-round pick. And here's the thing. If you think that, and we all think that, then man, go get paid. Yep. You go forward, go into the draft, because there's no guarantees if you're a first-round pick next year. It's a really interesting case. Da'Sean just said it best of what would other teams think of him. And it's always hard to project that point guard type of player in the league. Mm-hmm. How much time are they getting? But I think Miles McBride fits the bill of today's NBA. What I like about him is hey, everybody, the mid-range is back. The mid-range is back. The mid-range pull-up has come back like the Jersey Shore is revved up and open for business. That's the way that the mid-range has come back to the NBA. Miles McBride has a mid-range. He could stop on a dime, hit that shot. I like the way that he's evolved as a player. I think he gets selected this summer. It's unfortunate for Mountaineer fans. They'll be fine. Bob Huggins knows how to harvest and
just brought him in point guard. So
yeah, he'll be fine.
You mentioned the mid-range. I do think it's important to note that he shot 41.4% from three on almost 4 attempts per game. He's a really good, off the dribble shooter. He also, his assist rate was double his turnover rate. I thought that once West Virginia made the change, once Big She transferred out and they really kind of opened things up, the reason why they became one of the most potent offenses in college basketball is because of Miles McBride's ability to kind of operate in that spaced floor, his ability to kind of get in the lane and find people, right? Their offense was basically, let's put a bunch of shooters out there. Let's put Miles McBride out there and let Derek Culver clean everything up in the paint. And it worked really, really well for a long time for West Virginia. I do want to mention 4 other people in the Big 12 before we get out of here. One of them is Remy Martin, who is he transferred out of Arizona State, has committed to Kansas. He's still in the draft, although I would probably expect him to come back. I don't like Remy is I don't think he's going to be drafted. I don't think he's a two-way guy. His decision in my mind basically comes down to, do I want to try to play overseas? Do I want to give it a shot at Kansas and on a more national stage? I think he'll be back. Jericho Sims at Texas is a guy that I think is kind of undervalued in the eyes of NBA draft folks. He's so good defensively and such a great athlete. He can't really do anything other than catch and dunk. But in an era where finding people that can protect the rim and be switchable is really, really valuable, he's a guy that can provide a lot of that value. And the last 2 are at Baylor. James Akinjo, I'm assuming he's going to be eligible, but he's one of these guys that's transferred twice. And so it's not exactly clear if he's going to be immediately eligible. As far as I know, the NCAA has not put down an official ruling on that. And then Matthew Meyer, who I think he'll probably be back. He's the kind of guy that I can see having a huge leap and becoming like a top 20 pick if he comes back. If he leaves now, he'll probably be drafted. He'll probably be on a contract somewhere. But when you're 6'9" and you can score the way that he can score, I think that he needs to come back, be the star of this team, show you're better defensively than you were last year. Boom, first round pick. That's where I'm at with it. I like those last 2.
I got 2 briefly sticking in New Jersey, Rutgers, Geo Baker and Ron Harper. At the end of the day, those 2 players were part of the equation for Rutgers. Rutgers should have been in the Sweet 16. It is a massive collapse that they had to Houston. Rutgers should have not lost that game. Guess what? They did. Close only counts in horseshoes. And for Harper and Baker, if they come back, Rutgers is a solid Big Ten team. If Harper and Baker do not come back, Rutgers is a doormat Big Ten team again. They're going to be at the bottom of the league or close to it anyway. So that's something I'm looking at too, because we talk about the depth of the Big Ten. It was such a big strength for the league last year. If you have to factor Rutgers in there and you play them twice in the season, if you have to go to the rack and Harper and Baker are going, Rutgers could hang their heads. What I always look at in college basketball is, for a conference, who are those teams that sometimes are fringe tournament teams that end up stealing a bid, giving that league a unit, and then having a chance in an 8, 9, 7, 10 game? Potentially Rutgers, if they have Harper and Baker back, that could be an interesting pair. And I couldn't agree with you more on Matthew Meyer, because I think he's a lot better than his numbers he can show.
Honestly, it's not even close. I'm not going to say that they won because of him, but you watched the last game they played, man. You can't not guard him. And he's just so skilled that, at that position at the 4-5, there was nothing anyone could do with him regardless of where he was at. He's a talented dude. So,
yep. All right. Well, listen, it's been fun, guys. Great to catch up. I know it's been about a month since we did these. We're going to start getting into about a one every 2 weeks series as we kind of get through the rest of the summer. You know, Fanta's got his Jersey Shore nights. We can't cut into any of that. We have to make sure that he's able to get out, experience the Jersey Shore. By the way, Day, I don't know if you caught that when he jumped on the call. Did you hear him say down the shore?
I heard him. Trust me, I heard him.
This dude is from Cleveland, and now he's saying down the shore. That's how you know he's full Jersey, right?
Is with us.
Jersey, for people that aren't from here, Jersey people say down the shore, right? And they also say I'm done dinner or I'm done at the gym. They don't say done with, right? I'm done working out. They don't say done with. They forgot the word with exists. It drives me insane, but it is what it is.
Two things.
Oh,
Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Hope that you dads get to enjoy a great barbecue. We've actually had that debate a couple times. If you could have any college basketball coach be a father-in-law to you, like who would be an okay father-in-law? It's always a fun debate. We could talk for hours. And then my second thing is, college basketball has its villain, and that is one Jeff Goodman.
Honestly, I will not argue with you on that. I've never seen so many people after Goodman.
Neither will Bloomington.
Insane.
Neither will Bloomington.
Everybody hates Jeff Goodman. You know what? That should be the new name of our podcast. Everybody hates Jeff Goodman.
That should be the segment we have where we invite Goodman on the talk. He's like our next segment.
No, that's a great idea. We're going to have a new segment. Everybody hates Jeff Goodman, and we're going to bring on a fan to explain why they hate Jeff Goodman.
I want to do a mean tweets. Like we should start doing mean tweets on the pod, because you could really have some fun reading some of the comments that we get.
I don't get any of the mean tweets anymore because I blocked everybody that's an idiot. So that's where I'm at with it. But anyway, guys, always a good time. Subscribe, rate, review, like, do all of that stuff wherever you're listening to this, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's Spotify. Give us some interactions. That's the best thing to be able to help grow this podcast if you enjoy this show. Fanta, Da'Sean, until next time. What's the most embarrassing thing that you would admit publicly in the New York Times to just try to get your job back? And how much would you have to be making at that job to admit it? Because I mean, how much do you think he was making at CNN? Probably 6 figures with a crooked number in front, right?
Easily, without question.
To blow that.
Yeah.
So would you do it for $200K a year? Would you go into the New York Times and admit that you started trying to jerk it while you were in the middle of a meeting? You wouldn't. If everybody already knew, right? It's not like it was a secret. Everyone already knew.
Yeah.
I mean, after the fact of doing it, I kind of feel like I would just hide out for a while. Just a little downtime wouldn't hurt me.
I'd probably admit it, man. Like, whatever.
I mean, you have no choice to admit it. I mean, it happened, like you said.
Get your job back. You got to get your job back.
Yeah, I know.
Make some money sometime.
You don't need to go on air to fully expose yourself again.
Yeah.
Just keep exposing yourself.
First and foremost, what I would do is I would always make sure that little green light is off.
Facts, bro.